Delia and I would like to thank all of you who came today to help us remember Caleb. I'm a preacher, but I'm not going to preach today, but I am going to share about our wonderful son. It's the hardest thing we could ever imagine going through. Monday night, Caleb was perfectly happy and healthy. Sunday morning, he had led worship in church. He did children's church. We had a small group that day, so he took the kids for children's church. He even helped me set everything up. He carried the chairs, he carried the sound equipment. And I remember being amazed that day at how strong he had become, how strong Caleb was on Sunday. And, even on Sunday, he watched his fantasy football team win, and he watched the Lions lose. So Monday, he had a typical great day. He had weightlifting and football practice in the afternoon and evening. As Delia said, he made dinner with her. And he joked and prayed with us, and Anna and Evan. He was so excited that he said, I'm about to turn 14 years old. And for some reason, he got excited. It was a perfectly normal day, and he was happy. So happy. And then on Tuesday morning, he didn't wake up. The truth is this: Caleb stood out from the moment he was born. When he was born in the hospital in Singapore, the only thing the nurses said to me, it was considered an emergency C-section, so I wasn't allowed in the room that time, the rules in Singapore at that time. But they were bringing me to see him, and nurse after nurse just said, he's so big. We've never seen a baby this big. He was big by any standards, especially in Singapore. He was 9 pounds, 5 ounces. His skin, his skin was like mine at that point, very, very white. So he was outstanding from the moment he was born, a giant white baby in a creche with much, much smaller babies in Glen Eagles in Singapore. He was truly outstanding, and he never stopped standing out. He was talking at 8 months old, reading at 2 years old. Academics always came easy to him. Sports were not quite as easy. He was athletic, but it wasn't as easy as academics. But he worked and worked and worked until he became such a good athlete. I taught him to throw a spiral and run pass patterns in our living room in Singapore when he was 4. We did 3 plays over and over in our living room. I have a very gracious wife. She let us throw a football in the living room. And when he was 6, he would come to my football games, flag football games in Singapore, and everybody in the league knew him as this little boy who cheered so loud and tried to get on the field as soon as the game was over. When it came to music, he had such talent. I remember our church in Singapore. We had an outdoor Christmas concert when he was 3 years old. Dilia's extended family was performing a song in Malay, the language Malay. Caleb didn't know Malay, but he came to the front of the group and he danced and danced in front of hundreds of people. He stole the microphone and started shouting the song out in front of hundreds of people, and he stole the show. In the last few years, of course, Caleb also learned to cook, wrote books, learned how to play the piano. I want to encourage everyone here today, from the youngest to the oldest, to live your lives to the fullest for the glory of God. Caleb really was amazing. He put everything he put his mind to, he excelled, and he glorified God doing so. He lived for Jesus, and he always wanted to do what's right. I know this day is hard for so many of you, for our family, for both here in the United States and those watching in Singapore. For Caleb's 8th grade classmates who are here, for his teammates, both on the football team, his basketball teams of the last few years, for friends and church friends from around the world. We have people watching from so many nations. For his wonderful siblings, Evan and Anna. It's a hard day, but I want to say, let Caleb's example motivate you. Do all that you do for God's glory. Live with a passion. Worship, study, play. Do it with all your might. Be strong and do it. Ezra 10:4. Live for the glory of God. I have just a couple more stories I want to share before I stop. I remember when Caleb was in 4th grade, the year we moved here to Michigan. He was on an upward basketball team, and the truth is we didn't have a good team. We were 0-6. We lost our first 6 games, and we were about to play the other team that hadn't won a game, week 7, and we finally had a chance to win. Somehow I messed up the timing of the game. Only time I've ever done this. I'm a punctual person actually, but I messed up the timing of the game. And when I brought him, it was in the 4th quarter of the game, last quarter. We were losing by 10. In the last quarter, Caleb scored 10 points and we lost by 1 point, 21-20 in an upward basketball game. You know, as a fourth grader who was so competitive, Caleb was devastated. He was bawling and bawling that he missed his chance. This was his chance to shine in this game, to get that win. He was bawling and bawling, and I told him, I was like, Caleb, I'm so sorry. When we got to the car, I said, I'm sorry. And you know, in the middle of his tears, Caleb just told me, it's okay, Dad, it's okay. And he kept telling me it's okay. I would tell him it's my fault, I'm so sorry. And he kept saying, it's okay. You know, even as he was crying and sobbing, he wanted to make sure I didn't feel bad about it. A 9-year-old wanted to make sure that I didn't feel bad that I had missed his game. If there's one story I've told about Caleb more than any other, everywhere I've preached, I preached this the first time in Uganda when he was 4 years old, and I preached it everywhere else since. The story is called Caleb and the Vegetables. And every time I tell this story, Caleb and the Vegetables, Caleb will roll his eyes, but then he'll also smile. He secretly liked it when I told this story. You see, when Caleb was 2, he had one passion in life when he was 2 years old, and that passion was food. Caleb loved to eat, and he would walk around our house in Singapore saying, I eat chicken, I eat cookies, I eat ice cream. He was constantly begging for food. He loved to eat, but he had one giant trial in his life. He had one thing he hated, and that was vegetables. Every time we served him vegetables, he would say, Daddy, no, I want chicken, I want ice cream. And you know, as a good father who wanted my son to be happy, I would see his literal tears. He was passionate about things. I would see his tears. And I could have taken those vegetables away. I could have taken away that thing that was bothering him and given him ice cream every day. It would have made him happy in that moment, but it wouldn't have made him strong. He wouldn't have become the football player, the fit football player, if he hadn't learned how to eat those vegetables. You see, I knew they were working something in Caleb, those vegetables. As a 30-year-old father, I knew they were giving him something that he couldn't see. My wisdom and knowledge was greater than the 2-year-old's, and I could see what he couldn't. And I think it's like that with God. We walk through pain and we say, God, no, I can't do it. Give me the easy things, give me the things I like. But sometimes God says, if you just go through this, if you just eat these vegetables, it's working something in you. It's working something in you that will benefit you forever. It's doing something of infinite value. And we don't understand, but I think if we could somehow see what God has done in Caleb now, where Caleb is now, we would realize that these vegetables, these terrible things and moments in our lives, some way we'll never understand it on this side of eternity, but in heaven we'll understand that God was doing something, that somehow the vegetables, that somehow the worst moments in life were all worth it. I'm coming to a close, but I just wanted to tell you about my good night routine with Caleb. Since he was 4 years old, every night we would say the exact same thing to each other. We stole it from a VeggieTales video. I would kiss him on the cheek and say, I love you, little mister. He would look up at me and say, I love you, big mister. And again, we started this when he was 4 years old, and it was awesome when he was 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. This was our routine. But then when, as he got older and he got bigger, when he turned 11, I remember asking him, Caleb, do we need to stop this little mister, big mister stuff? And he said, maybe we do. But we didn't stop. We did it when he was 11. It was just how we expressed our love for each other every night. When he turned 12, I asked him, do we need to stop the big mister, little mister? He said, maybe. But then we didn't stop. And, when he turned 13, I asked him again. We knew how silly it was now. We knew it was silly for me to call him little mister, him to call me big mister. But we didn't stop. We just didn't stop. It was the way we showed love for each other. But, at times we would wonder, when will this have to stop? Can I still tuck him in and call him little mister when he's 16, when he's 17? I would think, when is this ever going to stop? How can I stop tucking him in and calling him my little mister? Monday night, the last night, Caleb is 13. He was big himself. As I said, he was strong, so strong, almost as strong as me. 5'9", football playing, worship leader, book writing, honor roll student son. But I told him that night, I love you, little mister. He looked up to me and said, I love you, big mister. And you know what I realize is that we never had to stop. We never had to stop doing that. And up to his last night, he was always my little mister. I never had to stop. So I love you, little mister. Final thing, I play softball here at Bethesda in their church league. Our church has a team here. And this summer, in the month of July, in one of our games, I actually hit a double, and I never hit a double. Singles is all I get, but I hit a double. And Caleb was watching from the dugout. And you know what Caleb did? Most teenagers, most teenagers wouldn't do this, but Caleb was watching. He watched every game I ever played in. Even as I got older and slower and everything else, Caleb kept watching. He saw me get to second base, and Caleb shouted out loud, "That's my dad, that's my dad." He shouted it out loud. And I knew he was being funny. I knew he was being a little silly, but I also knew he was really proud of me. So I saw him, I raised my hand, I acknowledged him. He was proud of me. He was proud of me. But today, he said, "That's my dad." I want to say to all of us here, that's my son. That's my son. That's my son. Caleb's my son. So may we follow his example, live passionately for Jesus, and live to please the Heavenly Father. Amen. Thank you for being here.